Rolex is the first name in luxury watches for a reason. Their commitment to craftsmanship and design have made them desirable to the world's wealthiest class for more than 100 years. Rolex was founded in 1902 by Hans Wilsdorf and his brother-in-law Alfred Davis as Wilsdorf and Davis. They founded the watchmaking company in London, where they specialized in importing Swiss mechanics and then placing them in quality watch cases made by British companies. The duo distributed the timepieces to jewelers that added their names to the wristwatches. Then, in 1908, they decided on the name Rolex because Wilsdorf wanted his brand to be easily pronounced in any language. More than a century later, Rolex is responsible for most of the major innovations of luxury watches and managed to make more than $7 billion a year in sales. But the question remains, why is Rolex so expensive? To answer this question, we first need to establish exactly how expensive Rolexes are. The Swiss brand is responsible for the 3rd and 8th most expensive watches in the world. A Rolex Paul Newman Daytona sold in 2017 for $17.753 million, or $18.5 million when adjusted for inflation. After 12 minutes of bidding, the watch was sold to a bidder on the telephone, setting a new record for the highest price ever achieved for a wristwatch at auction. More than 400 people from all over the world gathered at Philips's New York headquarters at 57th and Park Avenue for the winning Icons auction. The next most expensive Rolex was sold in 2018 in Geneva, Switzerland for $5.93 million. Of course, we can't forget to mention that the seller of this watch, John Goldberger, graciously donated it to be auctioned, with all proceeds going to the charity Children Action. But these watches in question are more valuable because they are rare, vintage watches made in 1968 and 1970 respectively, making them extremely collectible. So how expensive is the average Rolex watch? The Oyster Perpetual is the lowest priced model of Rolex, and it costs a little over $5,000. It is important to understand that this is an entry-level price for the wristwatch. There are several other models for sale under $10,000, including the Explorer at a price of $6,550, the Datejust 2 for $9,000, the Submariner at a starting price of $7,500, and the Milgauss for $7,650. This may seem like a lot of money for the average person, because $7,000 could serve as the down payment on a car or a luxurious vacation. But these entry-level watches are not representative of the higher-end Rolexes, which regularly sell for more than $20,000. This cost can be explained in a number of ways. First, Rolex watches cost a lot of money to design. Rolex has an extraordinary internal research and development department. They have various professional labs and facilities where researchers and scientists work on new Rolex watches and manufacturing techniques. Rolex has to ensure that they have the best team in these labs and facilities. Hence, they prefer to use highly trained scientists in their chemistry lab for research on oils and lubricants used in their machines. Other special facilities of Rolex include a stress test room for testing watch movements, cases, and bracelets. The company also has a room with several electron microscopes and gas spectrometers, where research on metals and other materials takes place. Research and development can take many years, meaning that Rolex has already invested many thousands of dollars before a watch ever goes to market. Rolex states that it can take up to a year to build a Rolex movement, and the bezel alone takes 40 hours to perfect. Each and every single Rolex part is made to perfection without any compromise. And in order to achieve this level of perfection, you need time and great attention to detail. Next, the materials themselves. For its watches, Rolex uses 904L steel that is particularly difficult to mold. This steel is also more expensive than most other types, though it's undoubtedly better looking. No other watch manufacturer uses this kind of steel, which makes the Rolex watch unique. This material is more corrosion and rust resistant, and it's also harder than other types of steel. Aside from this steel, Rolex is also renowned for its use of gold. Rolex is touted as being the only watchmaker to produce their own gold. This explains why some gold models feature on lists of the most expensive watches. Rolex usually refines 24-karat gold into 18-karat yellow, white, or Everose gold for their products. In addition, Rolexes are guaranteed to tell time accurately. Rolex watches are not just certified as chronometers by the independent Swiss Chronometer Testing Institute, COSC, they are tested a second time by Rolex to earn the title of superlative chronometer. Every mechanical watch that leaves Rolex's state-of-the-art manufacture is accurate to plus or minus 2 seconds a day, a tolerance rate that surpasses the already stringent standards of the independent COSC tests of plus or minus 4 seconds per day. And all of the minute movements are still assembled by hand. Despite the fact that Rolex makes extensive use of robots for production, the tasks performed by machines and robots are actually simple ones. These include sorting, cataloging, and filing. In fact, watch movements and bracelets are usually hand-assembled. Before watches are sent to COSC for chronometer certification, they are often double-checked and tested by humans to ensure high quality. This is even more remarkable considering that Rolex produces between 800,000 and 1 million watches a year. By producing so many pieces in-house, Rolex is able to control the production and ensure that every piece is held to the same strict standard. It also allows Rolex to be truly independent since they aren't reliant on other companies and manufacturers for their parts. In addition, these watches hold up under pressure. This all began with the launch of the Rolex Submariner in 1953. With the Submariner, a professional dive watch capable of fathoming depths of 100 meters opened the hatch on a new underwater world and became a vital part of the James Bond persona. Today, this iconic dive watch is water-resistant to 300 meters and features a scratch-resistant ceramic insert on the rotating bezel and a cool, long-lasting blue luminescence. The 40mm steel Submariner model with a black Cerachrome bezel and black dial retails for $8,000, while a solid white gold Submariner with a date window costs $30,000. All Rolex Oyster Case watches are individually tested for water resistance. A watch is placed in a small chamber that is filled with air, and if the pressure changes, then that means air leaked into the case. Rolex runs each Rolex Oyster Case watch through this treatment before and after the movement and dial have been placed inside of it. Rolex dive watches, such as the Rolex Submariner and Sea-Dweller, are then further tested for water resistance in a tank with actual water. But regardless of their materials and construction, a Rolex's value has a lot to do with the company's heritage and legacy. To cement its status, Rolex invented the first waterproof case, the first self-winding watch, the first watch with a date, and one of the first diving chronographs. Before watches became the luxury item they are today, they were tools. These innovations have made Rolex watches much more usable. A self-winding mechanism enables the wearer to avoid having to wind the watch every night. A waterproof case allows a diver to take the watch down with them and time their dives. And a driving chronograph allows race car drivers to time their laps with precision. These innovations also make it easier to wear the watch every day. Rolex also understands the importance of celebrity endorsement. In 1927, the company approached Mercedes Gleitze, the first woman to swim the English Channel and the first person to swim the Strait of Gibraltar, and asked her to wear the new Rolex Oyster watch, complete with waterproof case. The swimmer agreed and wore it around her neck during an attempt to swim the channel. Though she didn't actually complete the swim on that attempt, Gleitze's celebrity status catapulted Rolex's name into the public consciousness, and Rolex was able to talk up the fact that the watch kept time even after being submerged in cold water for hours. This greatly increased brand awareness and the public's opinion of Rolex's quality. Since then, Rolex has gotten its watches in the hands of many of the world's most powerful celebrities, like Brad Pitt, the Dalai Lama, Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, Mao Zedong, and Drake. Very few qualities unite this group besides their love of quality watches. Thus, Rolex benefits from their endorsements. And they didn't stop there. In the 1980s, Rolex began a massive awareness campaign to subtly incorporate the Rolex name in everything related to time and success. Travel to any airport worth going to today, and you can be sure you'll find a lot of Rolex-branded clocks. The same goes for popular sporting and cultural events. And then there's the big question: is buying a Rolex a good investment? In the past, certain watches have skyrocketed in value, mostly due to rarity and quality, while others have flatlined. Over time, we have seen that generally the best Rolex investment has been in the sports model category. And of these, the Rolex Daytona and Rolex Submariner valuations have both performed well over time. Special editions, or those in limited supply, have also seen the valuation of the initial investment perform well over time. For example, the Rolex Hulk Submariner, the Rolex GMT Master II, Batman, and the Rolex Deep Sea Blue. Discontinuation of a model also increases the value of a Rolex investment, particularly when there have been limited numbers produced. A recent example of this was the Rolex Sea-Dweller 4000, which was not overly popular whilst in production, but with a short production run of only 4 years, discontinuation instigated a rush of buyers into the market, trying to snap up the last available models because with the low volumes produced, the value of the Rolex Sea-Dweller would increase for years to come. There is no data comparing the inflation of a watch's value versus the stock market or other equities like gold, but it's safe to say that you shouldn't count on a Rolex paying for your retirement. In fact, most owners simply hope to break even on their purchase after owning it for several decades. Experts agree that you should only buy a Rolex if you truly desire one, not if you consider it a long-term investment. As with other luxury brands, Rolex also depends on the idea of scarcity. If there were plentiful Rolexes on sale on every street corner, their perceived value would decrease greatly. As a result, Rolex tries to limit the number of watches they produce and even buy back their own products to cut down on the second-hand market. In fact, in recent years, Rolex has been facing a shortage of its products. This mostly had to do with the scarcity of metals that they depend on for their products. The chronic shortage of steel sport watches from Rolex and Patek Philippe in the US helped send retail sales of precious metal watches soaring in the first half of 2019. The shortage of many steel models has had a positive impact on precious metal models, said an expert. We're seeing a continued demand for steel sport models from many of the leading luxury watch brands, which can't keep production at a high enough level to meet overwhelming consumer interest. However, Rolex has been around for over a century, and they won't let this metal shortage put a damper on their profits. At the end of the day, consumers must decide for themselves if a Rolex is worth the exorbitant cost.